Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good evening to all. I'm pleased to welcome all participants to the IMO Symposium on Alternative Low Carbon and Zero Carbon Fuels for Shipping. The symposium will be conducted in English only. I will now start by inviting the IMO Secretary General, Mr. Keith Lim, to address this symposium. Mr. Lim, you have the floor. Mr. Keith Lim, can you hear me? The floor is yours if you're able to connect. There you are. Okay.
Good morning.
The floor is yours.
Mr. Oftedal. Thank you, Mr. Oftedal Swainen. Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you to IMO's Symposium on Alternative Low Carbon and Zero Carbon Fuels for Ships. Combating climate change is one of IMO's main priorities, but also one of the biggest challenges, in particular for shipping. During this symposium, we will present various promising solutions that would have potential to pave the way to reaching the GHG reduction goals, as set out in the IMO's initial GHG strategy. I found it very encouraging to see how the adoption of IMO's initial GHG strategy and its ambitious goals to decarbonize shipping by the end of this century has sparked so many new actions across the maritime value chain related to alternative low carbon fuels in parallel with our regulatory work. To achieve the goals set out in the GHG strategy, IMO, as the global regulator of shipping, has been demonstrating its commitment to the decarbonization of shipping by developing an ambitious regulatory framework that will drive innovative actions across all stakeholders, but also by providing a forum for discussion, cooperation, and collaboration. To reach a low and zero carbon future for shipping, will lead new technologies, new fuels, and innovation. Exciting research and development into low and zero carbon marine fuels is already underway. IMO wants to further accelerate such initiatives by providing the global forum for sharing knowledge to promote R&D and to build the partnerships between the stakeholders among public and private sectors, not only in the shipping industry and ports, but also private and development banks and academia at international, national, and local levels. No single stakeholders can make decarbonization of shipping by acting alone. The program of this symposium therefore emphasizes the importance of building partnerships and connecting the different actors in the maritime value chain. Just last November, IMO demonstrated that despite the very difficult situation imposed by COVID, we were able to make progress through cooperation by approving short-term GHG reduction measure in the virtual meeting. Acting together, we can define the strategic, regulatory, and the policy framework that is needed to attract necessary investment, to put in place the required infrastructure, and to ensure a safe use of low and zero carbon fuels. There are leaders of this journey in the world, the climate champion, and some of them will present their latest innovation during this symposium. At the same time, IMO wants to ensure that no country is left behind in the energy transition. Therefore, this symposium also serves to highlight the opportunities for member states to share knowledge of generating and supplying renewable marine fuels across the world and identify potential area of collaboration and cooperation. To support this, IMO continues to expand its portfolio of capacity building projects, which are in line with IMO's ambitious goal in the GHG strategy. For instance, IMO's Green Voyage 2050 project focuses on assisting developing countries in achieving the level of ambition set out the IMO GHG strategy by exploring alternative fuel opportunities. Our next-gen initiative provides a concept for a collaborative global ecosystem of maritime decarbonization initiatives, aiming to facilitate information sharing on decarbonization initiatives across many stakeholders and to identify opportunities and the gaps for decarbonization in the global shipping communities. IMO, together with the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development and the World Bank, have also established a FinSmart roundtable with the leaders from financial, public, and private sectors, an initiative launched to discuss and address financial challenges to deal with the climate change and the COVID-19 recovery in the maritime sector, particularly in developing countries. Ladies and gentlemen, IMO's GHG strategy has sent a clear signal that it is time for energy transition in shipping with alternative fuels and infrastructure to support low and zero emission of shipping. The route to net zero carbon shipping will not be easy. Nonetheless, I am hopeful that the range of initiatives presented during this symposium will demonstrate what is already underway, but also underline what more is needed to accelerate zero carbon shipping. Maritime trade is vital to the world's sustainable development. So let us use this symposium to reinforce existing partnerships and to create new opportunities to work together to enable the sustainable post-pandemic recovery and to ensure that shipping has a truly sustainable, decarbonized future. I'm confident that our presentation, discussion today and tomorrow will benefit us all and will showcase our commitment to decarbonization of shipping. I wish you all the best and also very success of this symposium. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Secretary General, for your opening remark, for your leadership, and for initiating this very important symposium. Now, I would like also to thank all participants all around the world which are connected to Zoom and on YouTube for joining us on the IMO Symposium on alternative low carbon and zero carbon fuels for shipping. Let me first inform you on some important practical information. All attendees on Zoom, you will have your microphones automatically muted and your cameras turned off. You will be able to turn them on upon a specific request for the floor. After the presentations by the panelists in each block, there will be a Q&A session. Participants are invited to send written questions to the speakers using the Q&A function you can see at the very end of your bar on your screen, the Q&A icon. During the Q&A session, I will try to accommodate as much questions as possible. The Secretariat will monitor the question posed on the Q&A space. The Secretariat will also collect any remaining issues and follow up on those with the speakers after the symposium. And it is an intent to share that with you on the IMO website, imo.org, meaning that we will try to accommodate as much questions as possible so we can all be informed. It is of paramount importance that we adhere to the strict time management. I insist here on the need for speakers to stick to the 10-minute speaking slot, since we open on time and we will close on time. Finally, I should inform you that the symposium is now broadcasted live on IMO YouTube page that will be recorded, and that presentation materials will be made available on the IMO website after the symposium. Now, let me provide you some remarks on the program. I think it is very exciting. The program for today and tomorrow was built from the observations that transition towards a low carbon shipping and will involve the maritime community entirely, all players, from charters to fuel providers, from ship operators to shipyards, from equipment manufacturers to ports, from research institutions and seafarers. And each and everyone's experience will be important. Hurdles and expectations need to be considered. The program of this symposium will allow for a wide variety of stakeholders to discuss the issues at hand. Under Block 1, we will invite ship owners from all around the world to share their experience in using a variety of alternative low carbon and zero carbon fuels, and listen to their expectations in terms on how IMO could facilitate the uptake of alternative fuels. Under Block 2, we will focus our attention on building future-proof ship, with speakers presenting state-of-the-art technology supporting the transition towards low-carbon shipping. And tomorrow, under Block 3, we will start by looking into the fuel supply chain. And finally, under Block 4, we will enlarge the discussion to fuel production issues, R&D, and look in particular at opportunities for countries to provide low carbon and zero carbon fuels for shipping. As clearly stated by the Secretary General, the reduction of GHG emissions from ships stands high on the IMO agenda, and this will most likely accelerate in the years to come. The IMO's history is full of challenges we are facing together, and it is by moving forward together as an organization that we will overcome the global climate challenge. The initial IMO strategy on reduction of GHG emissions from ships identifies the need to actively promote the work of the organizations to the international community. And therefore, this symposium falls fully within the strategy framework. That is what we intend to do here and tomorrow, today and tomorrow. At the symposium, we will be invited to listen to and then engage discussions with eminent speakers. I'm glad to be the moderator of this event. And of course, I will take my notes. This is very important for me as information to me as well. And I'm sure that very much important information will be shared. I'm confident that this international symposium will make a positive contribution to the wider policy discussions taking place at the IMO. And I believe that the information to be presented during these 2 days will be useful to that extent. Now, I now suggest, and we have all speakers now logged in, that we move forward to Block 1. And I'm happy we are a little bit ahead of schedule. That is fine. So we go into Block 1 and invite ship owners to share their experience on the use of alternative sustainable fuels. The 5 speakers, they will provide a 10-minute presentation, followed by a Q&A session after all 5 presentations. You can start asking questions as the presenters hold their presentations and using the Q&A function, and make sure that the author and the recipient of the question are clearly identified. So identify yourself and also be specific to whom you pose the question. And now I think we shall start with the first presentation. And I would like to start by inviting Mr. Xavier Leclerc, Director of CMA Ships, to share his experience of challenges faced and lessons learned from operating LNG-fueled container ships and insight on the uptake of low carbon and zero carbon fuels for shipping. Mr. Leclerc, the floor is yours.
Let me, yeah, it's good morning and good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, dear panelists. I hope you can see the presentation in full screen. Can you confirm that?
We can see the presentation.
I'm sorry. So let's get started anyway. So I think if that's okay for everyone, I will scroll it from here. Sorry, I'm not super familiar with Zoom, but no problem. So I'm very pleased to be part of this very important symposium and share in the most transparent way the experience from CMA CGM, who has engaged a quite ambitious program over the last year. So there will be quite a number of ships in operation. We are at the middle of the program. I think LNG is a decisive step towards an energy transition. Our experience shows that the use rate is in permanent progress. As everyone knows, the supply chain is under constant development. I will share with you quickly how strong the training program needs to be, and of course, challenges and room for improvement of our program. So the whole thing started from the vision from Jacques Sade himself, who very quickly understood that sustainability and shipping will be closely linked, and that we had to invest heavily in that field for the future. So in 2017, Rodolphe Sade, heading CMA CGM, has taken the decision to order quite a large fleet of ships, and that's where we are at this moment. So the objective of the program was, of course, to reduce the impact of our activity by 20% on the CO2, 92% on the NOx, 91% on particulate, and 99% on SOx. We will see where we stand as we have now the first feedback in operation. So this is quite, as you can see, an ambitious program. We are close to half of it. There will be 26 ships in operation by 2022, as you can see. So there's different type of ships. I will not go through into the details of the characteristic. So just for you to know, there's a series of 1,400 TEU, a series of 14,000 TEU, and a series of 23,000 TEU. So far we have delivered 12 ships. There are 14 ships still under construction, which will be delivered along 21 and 22. So at the end, we have 26 vessels will be in operation in 2022, and there are 4 shipyards involved. I've put, just for information for who might be interested in the different characteristics, I will not go through all of them. Just few words about that. What is interesting in that program is we have most of the technology available on board this program. We have Type C, we have Type B, we have Mark III technology, and as well for the engine solution, the big players are all on this program. WinGD, of course, AMAN, and Wärtsilä. So that gives us a good panel regarding the feedback I can share with you today. So we have all the solution in operation, and of course we are measuring the performance of that program. So if I stick to the main program, which is the 23K largest LNG-powered vessel ever built. This has been quite an extensive program of 7 years of research and development. Of course, there was key partners, and I don't think we can solve the environmental problem without a very large collaboration and an international collaboration. That was the case on this program. The shipbuilding shipyard was CSSC Group in China. We had the Bureau Veritas involved, WinGD, Wärtsilä, GTT Kyrgyzstan, and of course on the supply chain, this program could not have seen the light if Total and Rotterdam was not from day one in that program. So I insist on the fact that the supply chain in this challenge we are all facing is really key. So in terms of result now, I think what is the most important is where do we stand in results. So if we look at the Energy Efficiency Design Index, on the 23K, we are reaching 6.32. And we feel that there are further improvements with alternators on the main shaft line. We can reach 6.09, 6.54 for the 15 DF. K and 16.41 on the 14,000 TU. So we see that we already reach through that technology the 2030 objective, and we feel that there are still improvements which are possible with this technology. So again, I will highlight very much the fact that LNG is probably a technology where we need to further invest because there are solutions and we know where we stand. We've been measuring where we are, and we feel that there's quite a high potential in this technology. So if we look at the pathway, as I mentioned, we've reached the already with this delivery the 2030 objective. There's still a way to go to reach the -70, but again we feel that this technology has something like 15 to 20%, which is absolutely not the case of conventional fuel, and I think everyone would agree on that. So if we look at a very important point which has drawn the attention of all the shipping industry is of course the methane slip. I think we should not hide that with this technology there's a methane slip. So we've been measuring that, and what we reached so far is 2 grams of CH4 per kilowatt. It's the same on an auto cycle, on a diesel cycle, or very close by. And I think it's very important to measure it, to know where we stand in order to find solution. And we already have solution developed with our suppliers. We know what will be the design of the future series of ships to minimize. And I think our objective is to completely eliminate the CH4. But not only the technology on board the ship is important. I think the most important is also to work on the supply chain. And we know that the production of LNG is also something which could be further enhanced, and not only the ships themselves. So I think we should work on both sides, and we know exactly where we stand on board the ships. And I want to share in a very transparent way what do we measure at this moment on board our ships. In terms of emission, this is quite spectacular, and I think our goal was to minimize CO2 by 20%, and you can see in the figure here, which are measured figure on the first trip. The first trip is between Southeast Asia and Holland, where we do a full round trip, and we at this moment are getting 22 to 24% in consumption. So of course this is quite an achievement, not only due to LNG but also to the research and development plan done on the hydrodynamic and aerodynamic. So we can see that on the SOx we've reached the objective, on the NOx as well. And we are not yet at the objective on the particle matters, which is of course a major concern for the human being. So we'll continue to work on that story to reach our objective, which is higher than the 66.7% achieved. But again, in terms of CO2, NOx, and SOx, I think we've reached our goal. If we look just at the figures in terms of consumption, these are real figures. These are measured figures, and again, this is available for the whole community. Again, it's quite spectacular. I mean, we are between 22 to 30% in terms of consumption, with of course immediate results on the emission. So if we look now at the use rate, so we have a good backlog now, 784 days in operation for the very first ships. You can see that the use rate is around 91 to 95%. This is on the very first ships which we have been operated. And then on the larger ships with our partner, the CC Tignéret is not yet significant because she has been positioned, and I know that Mr. Ducot is online as well, has been positioned to a line where the supply chain is not the best, but will be solved within the end of the year, as there will be a barge located in Fos. If we look at the big one, the very first leg we're under fuel because it was not possible to load LNG in China. And with the very first legs we've done, we reached 96% of use with a very reliable operation on this extra large container ships. So if we look at the another very important point is of course the supply chain. We see that the supply chain is developing. Of course, the whole program was based on the supply done in Rotterdam with the partnership with Total and Rotterdam Harbour, which was a key partner during that program. We have already one possibility in Singapore now, and we are currently developing south of Europe and of course China. But I feel that we are not anymore in a chicken and egg story, as there are many projects of supply barges ongoing. I think there's 82 barges under construction at this moment. So the supply chain is definitely solved. If we look at just few things, because there are many questions regarding bunkering operation. The very first bunkering operation took us 58 hours. Of course, it was long, because the tank was not cold. And now we know that with a tank which is cold, it would take us less than 35 hours to bunker 18,600 cubic meters. Absolutely no impact on the operation, because at the same time we are loading and offloading containers. The only limitation we have in a restricted zone is with the reefers. So this is the progress we've been doing. Of course, we are learning on each bunker. This was seen as a critical operation, and we feel that with the very first experience and the number of bunkering we've done so far, 145, we feel that it's not an issue anymore. So last but not least, the training program. I mean, for you to know, we did design a very specific training courses. We have to train 800 seafarers, and of course we have a dedicated training course on that. But this is quite something, and of course the training facilities for us has been a concern and still remain a concern. I think in Europe this should definitely be increased. So main challenges we have had: prototype. Like every prototype, we've been learning every day, but we've reached a point where we feel that the operations are safe and they are reliable, and we feel that there's a good way for improving still the performance in terms of emission and efficiency. So things like post-combustion, electric load sharing, aerodynamics, hydrodynamic design, heat recovery is still possible on this technology, and we feel that for the next 20 years there's certainly a significant step towards energy transition. So as a conclusion, and I hope I've kept my 10 minutes, we've been in an innovative and ambitious program. We feel that LNG is an immediate, efficient step for the energy transition. The use rate is increasing daily. We feel that there are potential for improvement compared to conventional solution. Training is a challenge, and of course, we'd like to make sure that in the future rules, the use of bio LNG will be taken into consideration, because we are already using 13% of what we load on board as bio sources. And we definitely know that the way will be long, but LNG is a significant step into that path. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. You said yourself you hope you have kept to your time limitation, and indeed you have. And sorry to interrupt, but I think this was a very interesting presentation. We are now actually on schedule. So if you want to have a final sentence before you round up, Mr. Leclerc.
No, I'm very eager to see the rest of the symposium, because I think it is the biggest challenge the shipping industry is facing, and we are quite happy that we already invested in that. So I think for future rules, yeah, use of bio sources will be key, and then I feel that there are really potential improvement in this technology.
Thank you very much, and I will remind participants to post the questions in the Q&A and not in the chat function. The Secretariat will capture the questions anyway. Now, I would like to turn to Mr. Paul Hexter, the President of the Waterfront Shipping Company, to share his experience on operating tankers on methanol. Mr. Hexter, are you there? Yes, you are. Please share your screen, and then the floor is yours.
So are you able to see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. Welcome UN and IMO members, leaders, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul Hexter. I'm the President of Waterfront Shipping. Today, I'd like to share with you some information about the methanol market, its uses, including the use of methanol as an alternative clean marine fuel. We'll share some of the lessons we've learned as a ship owner, having used methanol as a marine fuel for the last 5 years, and the advantages of methanol as a marine fuel, and what we need to do to increase the adoption to meet the IMO 2050 decarbonization goals. So first, I'd like to share a little bit about Methanex Corporation. We're headquartered in Vancouver, Canada. We have production sites in Canada, Chile, Egypt, New Zealand, the United States, and Trinidad. We're the world's largest producer and supplier of methanol, servicing the growing demand for methanol around the globe. Methanol is one of the top traded chemicals globally, and hence has a well-established and far-reaching global supply chain in place today. Waterfront Shipping, a wholly owned subsidiary of Methanex, is a global marine transportation company specializing in the safe, responsible, and reliable transportation of bulk chemicals and clean petroleum products to major international markets. Today, we operate an extensive fleet of ocean tankers that comprises vessels from 3,000 to 50,000 deadweight, which forms a seamless network to move methanol around the globe. As at the end of 2020, we operate the world's largest methanol-powered fleet with 11 vessels, and have recently ordered a further 8, which by 2023 will increase our methanol representation to around 60% of our long-term fleet. Methanol is what we like to call an essential ingredient of modern life. It's traditionally used as a chemical feedstock in the production of countless industrial and consumer products. Just a few of the examples are shown here, from particle board and paint to plastics and carpets. More recently, we've seen a shift in market demand to growing markets in the energy sector. This now accounts for close to 50% of methanol demand. This includes the marine fuel portion. Methanol is most commonly produced on a commercial scale from natural gas. However, it can be produced from many renewable sources, such as biomass, recycled carbon, and recycled carbon dioxide. And it has the potential to significantly reduce well-to-propeller GHG emissions. Longer term, these renewable methanol sources provide a viable pathway to compliance with IMO's future decarbonization goals. This decarbonization can be progressively achieved as more renewable methanol comes to market. This is because methanol is methanol is methanol. It doesn't matter the production source of the methanol, whether gas, biomass, or recycled carbon dioxide. As long as it meets specification, there won't be any compatibility issues. This means that an investment in a methanol engine today will enable you to deliver on decarbonization in the future without further investment. With growing awareness over climate change, more and more governments are encouraging renewable fuel production through incentives to make them more cost competitive with today's fuel. Methanex, for our part, is investing in renewable methanol production through Carbon Recycling International in Iceland, which utilizes its emissions to liquid technology, converting renewable energy and recycled carbon dioxide emissions from a geothermal power station to renewable energy. There are a growing number of other low carbon and biomethanol producers around the world today, including Enerchem, BioMCN, and Liquid Wind. The uptake of this and other green fuels will be demand and regulatory driven, as the current economics aren't attractive without scale relative to fossil-based sources. This is the same for all of the alternatives we're seeing, otherwise we'd be using them today. From our experience, some of the key learnings. As with any new technology solutions, especially first of its kind technology, there were some initial minor teething issues, none of which prevented the vessels from operating, and they've been ironed out over the last 5 years. From a vessel performance perspective, we've seen two main wins. Methanol significantly reduces emissions of particulate matter, SOx, and NOx, and can also lower carbon emissions by up to 15%, meeting the most stringent emissions regulations in place today. Also, the dual fuel methanol engines have performed at equivalent or higher levels than comparable diesel engines and have returned slightly better specific fuel oil consumption. Our vessels now have performed over 100,000 operating hours on methanol, proving that the technology works. The 4 vessels that we launched in 2019 benefited from second generation engines, which were simpler and could achieve Tier 3 NOx compliance without exhaust after treatment. Methanol is an attractive option for the shipping industry for a few key reasons. Something that can't be underestimated is the benefit of being a liquid fuel at ambient temperature and pressure. This makes safe handling of methanol similar to that of conventional fuels, and also means less modifications are required to the engines and the fuel supply systems than gaseous or pressurized fuels. This translates to a lower cost with no need for expensive cryogenic or pressurized equipment. This benefit also goes beyond the ship infrastructure, where existing diesel, landside storage, and bunkering facilities can easily be repurposed to accommodate the growing use of methanol. This helps to complement the already existing global supply chain for methanol. Today, methanol is available in 88 of the world's top 100 ports and could easily be expanded to all ports by converting at relatively low cost existing diesel bunkering infrastructure. The higher energy density of methanol relative to other alternative fuels such as ammonia or hydrogen also means less bunkering port calls, making methanol more attractive on longer routes. Methanol flex fuel engines are now well proven with over 5 years of experience. The simple second generation flex fuel technology is essentially a traditional diesel combustion engine with a methanol add-on, which again minimizes conversion costs and keeps operational costs low. Minimizing conversion costs is aided by these new vessels meeting Tier 3 NOx regulations without the need for exhaust after treatment. Lastly, methanol has a low environmental footprint and is naturally biodegradable, making it more environmentally benign than conventional fuels. As well as meeting all of today's most stringent emissions regulations for SOx, NOx, and particulate matter, it also provides an immediate GHG, not just carbon reduction relative to today's fuel. And as I mentioned earlier, the growing renewable methanol pathway means an investment today is future-proofed with the ability to blend renewable methanol with conventional methanol without the risk of compatibility issues, and facilitates a smooth decarbonization transition with no further investment. We've had great support from our partners and growing recognition and interest from the industry. Methanol complies with the strictest emissions regulations without expensive exhaust after treatment. Methanol is a marine fuel that has been proven in practice, is practical as a liquid, and is cost competitive with clean alternative fuels over the energy price cycles, and provides a pathway to decarbonization. The industry is really taking notice of methanol as it invests for the future. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I look forward to the panel discussion a little later. For now, I'll leave you with a slide showing some of the partners that have helped us get this far. Without them, none of the achievements that have been reached so far would have been possible. The slide also includes some other significant industry players who have understood the benefits of, and in many ways advocated for the use of methanol as a marine fuel today and tomorrow. If I'm not able to answer all the questions during the Q&A period later, please feel free to reach out and I'll follow up wherever possible.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hexter, for sharing your experience and keeping exactly within your 10 minutes, and go straight to Mr. Daco, Mr. Cyril Daco, which is CEO of Eastern Pacific Shipping, to share his experience on testing biofuels on commercial maritime routes. Mr. Cyril Daco, the floor is yours.
Hello. Good morning, good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present to this symposium. Let me try to share my screen to start with. Can you see my screen?
Yes, please go on.
Okay, very good. So first of all, again, thank you. It's a privilege to present to this forum and give the perspective of the ship owner. First of all, I would like to commend this group for the work that you're doing and all the effort of the industry towards decarbonization. I think one observation that I have over the past few months or years is the level of commitment and interest on this topic has never been as high as it is now, and it's very nice to see that in a COVID environment, the industry is not dropping a ball on these important targets. From our perspective at Eastern Pacific Shipping, we've invested heavily in reducing our emissions, both in terms of human capital and financial means, and we've looked at many solutions and made investments in alternative fuels. Some of them were mentioned by our partner CMA-CGM earlier. One point I'd like to make before I go into the biofuel is that we take a very agnostic approach. There is a debate on what is the perfect solution for the future, what is a true zero emission solution, and it's not something that unfortunately we feel qualified to conclude on. And what we first look is what we can do for the environmental today, taking into account operational and commercial limitations. So on the specific topic of biofuel today, we've successfully tested on one of our vessels end of last year, and I'm pleased to present the results with you. Move to my next slide. 1 second. Just a couple of points on who we are. Eastern Pacific Shipping is an independent tonnage provider. We are part of a group that manages about 200 vessels technically and commercially. and we have a very diversified fleet. So in a way, we have a good reflection of what is the world of shipping out there. We have ships in all major segments: containers, tankers, and bulkers. And we've been trying to position ourselves as a provider of green and eco tonnage with like-minded partners. So we've made a commitment with a series of new buildings, vessels that some of them have already delivered using dual fuel, LNG, LPG, ethane, and partners with CMA CGM, BHP, Equinor, and others. Why I'm saying that is I think that accountability is key in this important task. And one thing that we did 5 years ago, we started measuring our emissions, and a very robust database of our emissions, looking at CO2 emissions as a whole, every time of SOx, NOx, obviously, starting looking at AER and EEOI ratios that are now being rolled out as industry norm. And as part of our ESG policy in 2019, we set a management target for AER fleet-wide and reduce our AER to a ratio of 4.5 when it used to be 5.1 in 2015. So one thing that we as a company are very proud of is that we, at the end of 2020, we actually hit our target, and we feel that we're way ahead on track to meet the IMO requirements for 2023, 2030, 2040, and 2050. What I'm saying that is because I feel that we can make things today, we can act today, and already have an impact today, and be ahead of the curve. And I think that's what the world is looking at when they look at our industry. So how did we do that, and how biofuel fits in that picture? First of all, our rationale has been we should not let the perfect be the enemy of the good. There are ways today to reduce emissions, and as long as they are practical, technically, operationally, and commercially, we should use them. We look at the world of environmental actions as far as ship owners is concerned in three buckets. Solutions that help us handle existing vessels, legacy ships with engines that are 10 to 20 years old, and biofuel fit in that picture. They can be used on existing vessels, and they can reduce emissions of these vessels now. Then we look at alternative fuels that are available today, and that might not be perfect, that might not be zero carbon, that might have some trade-off, but there are a number of solutions like LNG that was presented by our partner CMA, LPG, methanol, ethane. There are fuels out there that prove to have a net improvement. And then finally, we obviously spend a lot of time looking at the alternative for the future. Ammonia, hydrogen are being strong contenders out there, and we always try to analyze also what are the considerations that we should look at as ship owners: weight, energy densities, these issues that are question number one when we have to present these solutions to our partners. But today I will talk to you about biofuel. This is a solution that we can use now, and it's applicable to all vessels. Last year, we partnered with a fuel supplier in the Netherlands called Good Fuel. They produce biofuel from domestic waste. They are a leader in the industry. The fuel that they provide to us is 100% bio. We bunkered on one of our vessel, MR tanker, a stamp of 254 metric tons of biofuel, which we then burnt while we were doing Atlantic crossing over a period of 11 days. And I'll share more details now. But to get there, there was a journey. First, we had to prepare the test to make sure that we could draw good conclusions and valid conclusions. We have to get our teams prepared on shore. We had to get our crew prepared on the ships to operationally manage that new fuels. Then we conducted a risk assessment and management of change in partnership with all the relevant partners for this. These were our flag state, Singapore, and with the support of MPA. Class was involved, ABS in this case, and the engine manufacturer, MAN, in that case. One thing I wanted to note is that these three partners that were heavily involved in that operations were extremely supportive. which goes to show the level of momentum in the industry. And it was nice to, I mean, everybody was very pleased to participate into that important project. And once we had all the procedures cleared, we had to physically prepare the vessel, clean the tanks, make sure that our fuel supply systems were compliant, that there would not be any risk of contaminations. And one thing I'm pleased to report here is that this was a very successful trial. The changeover from conventional fuels to biofuel was seamless. The entire stamp of biofuel was burnt without interruptions over a period of 11 days, as we were, as I said earlier, doing a cross-Atlantic crossing. There was no operational issue to report. Engine performance was good. I've listed here some of the physical properties of the biofuel compared to VLSFO, which was the alternative fuel for this specific ship, as well as the engine performance. So the most technical of you will notice that the biofuel has lower viscosity, lower pour points, and about 10% lower calorific value compared to market standard VLSFO. And as a result of that, the engine consumption was slightly higher by about 10%. But as far as the engineering was concerned, in terms of RPM, sleep, load, power outputs, there was no noticeable difference that is worth noting here. So it was business as usual. So in a nutshell, I'm very happy to say that it works. What in terms of emissions, and here I'm just going to talk about CO2, which is the important emissions at stake today. We received certificates by SEC for a carbon certificate for zero emission. This fuel was used on the main engine only, so this relates to main engine emissions. As a total voyage, we still burned VLSFO on some of the auxiliary engines, but the net emissions was marginal compared to what we would have emitted otherwise. Putting here the AER ratio and the EEOI ratio impact. So we went from 5 to 6 grams to 0 on the main engine.
Mr. Dubois, I'm sure you're towards the finalization of your presentation. Can I just ask you to kindly to wrap up? So thank you very much.
Sure. I'll just go to the last slide. In a nutshell, 3 points. There's a potential to significantly reduce emissions. In our case, was 70 metric tons of CO2 per day that were reduced. Second point, that this is an operationally viable solution. It doesn't put the crew at risk, and it's viable for existing vessels. And lastly, it's available today. The question is quantities that are being made available to ship owners, and obviously a price. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Dubois, for sharing your experience. And we'll now turn to Mr. Toshi Nakamura, General Manager, Green Businesses Group NYK line, to present his expectations on using ammonia as marine fuel for zero-emission ships. Mr. Nakamura, please.
Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can see your slides. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving us such an opportunity to speak today. I'm very honored to be here. My name is Toshi Nakamura, a Senior General Manager of Green Business Group of NYK Head Office in Tokyo. Today's topics of my presentation is ammonia as marine fuel. Okay, this is today's agenda. And first, we will give you a very brief introduction of NYK and Green Business Group of NYK. Then second, we will explain our view on how we think we'll be able to reduce GHG to comply with IMO's target toward 2050, and what kind of roadmap we have in our mind. Third, we will introduce our R&D, research and development projects relating to ammonia as marine fuel. Then, last not the least, we will share with you where we can see challenges for realization of ammonia fuel vessel. Okay, company introduction. I think this is a NYK Group fleet and facility, and this is just a key figure of NYK Group asset, and we will skip this slide. It is very obvious. So on the next slide, this slide shows the background of establishment of Green Business Group, which I belong to. In 2018, we announced midterm management plan called Staying Ahead 2022 with digitalization and green. We are promoting digitalization and green initiatives and making an effort to optimize the overall supply chain and create new value in the environmental field. Based on this plan, we established our new Green Business Group in April 2019. It covers new business relating to hydrogen and ammonia and offshore wind power generation and LNG bunkering, which are closely related to each other. Okay, let's move on to the next agenda. We will introduce our views on GHG reduction in shipping. As you know, IMO set the GHG reduction target toward 2030, 2050, and 2100. In line with that, this slide is a future path released by Japanese Ministry of Land Infrastructure, Transport and Tourism, which is titled as Roadmap to Zero Emission of International Shipping. They released it in March 2020 after discussion with Japanese maritime industries and research institutes. This roadmap shows that IMO's target by 2030 on fuel efficiency is expected to be achieved by technical and operational improvement. However, in order to achieve IMO's target by 2050, utilizing new marine fuels, including hydrogen and ammonia, are essential. More precisely, this slide shows it is estimated ammonia or hydrogen will start to be used from late 20s and occupy 45% of all fuel consumption in shipping in 2050. Okay, this is a roadmap of ammonia production and consumption made by CFAA, Clean Fuel Ammonia Association in Japan, which used to be named Green Ammonia Consortium. In supply side, ammonia starts to be supplied in the shape of gray ammonia first. Then blue ammonia is coming around 2025 and green ammonia will come in 2030s. When it comes to the demand side, this slide shows ammonia is estimated to be used as marine fuel widely in 2030s after it is used in power generation sector in large scale in the shape of co-combustion with coal and or combined gas turbine cycle. Large-scale consumption in power generation will help the cost of ammonia to be reduced and enable shipping industry to start to use it as marine fuel economically. We will skip this slide to save time. Then, okay, now we want to move on to the introduction of our project. In 2020, we launched the three joint development R&D project with our partners in relation to ammonia. Two projects within three are development of ammonia fuel ships. One is ammonia fuel tugboat, which we call ATAG. The other is ammonia fueled ammonia gas carrier, which we call AFAGC. So NYK, IHI Power System, and Class NK started the joint R&D project to put the world's first ammonia fueled tugboat into practical use. We are proceeding with R&D from both technical and operational aspects for the introduction of ammonia as a marine fuel for tugboats. We have been tackling themes such as the technological development of the hull, engine, and fuel supply system, and development of safety navigation methods. In fact, these three companies in the past worked together to jointly develop the LNG fuel tugboat named Sakigake. She was built in 2015 as Japan's first ship fueled by LNG which was bunkered from outside of the ship. In ATAG project, we will utilize the knowledge accumulated in the development, construction, and operation of Sakigake. NYK Line, Nihon Shipyard, and Class NK are working on the joint R&D project for AFAGC. Large-scale marine transportation of ammonia is currently carried out by multi-purpose LPG carriers, but in this project, we will be engaged in the R&D of a liquefied ammonia gas carrier. AFAGC shall use ammonia as a marine fuel, which is stored in cargo tanks. This concept will contribute to the early realization of zero emission for ocean-going vessels because it can avoid the bunkering challenges, as we explain later. This joint R&D aims not only to utilize ammonia as a marine fuel, but also to establish methods for the mass transportation and supply of ammonia for introducing co-combustion with coal power plant operated by Japanese electric power companies. Okay, lastly, we will explain challenges to overcome in order to realize concept of ammonia fuel vessel. We are now facing both technical and commercial challenges. Technical side, we have three major challenges. One is how we can minimize pilot fuels considering fire retardancy of ammonia. Second is how we can deal with NOx and N2O, which is recognized as about 300 times bigger GHG than CO2. Third, there is no proven and developed generator which can use ammonia as fuel. We need to develop it. When it comes to the commercial challenges, we have four challenges. First, it should be higher cost as of now. Second, it needs more storage tank space because ammonia's energy density is about 3 times lower than HFO. However, it is a matter of judgment. What we think more important is challenges in supply chain and safety. We will explain then by additional slides lastly. So this, please take at this slide. We believe you can understand how long it took to escape from the situation of what we call chicken and egg, of realization of LNG bunkering. As you imagine, ship owner says, we cannot invest LNG fueled vessel without sufficient and reliable LNG supply by LNG bunkering vessel. On the other hand, bunker supplier says, we cannot invest LBV without enough demand from LFV. It took more than 10 years. The situation has almost ended. However, maybe 2 or 3 more years will be needed from now until such situation is completely finished. This is last, then safety. Ammonia is toxic and corrosive material. So in order to build ammonia fuel vessel, we need to comply with safety regulations. What kind of regulations will be applied? It depends on the type of the ship. In the ship, if the ship is liquefied gas carrier like AFAGC, IGC code shall be applied. It means toxic fuel is not allowed to be used. So in principle, AFAGC cannot use ammonia fuel without amending IMO regulations. If the ship is other type of ship than liquefied gas carrier, IGF code shall be applied. The IGF code mainly covers LNG fuel. Ammonia fuel is not covered. We need to set guidelines based on safety verification. We will skip it. This is the last slide. We proceed with our ammonia project in cooperation with the related Japanese government sector, MLIT, and Japanese Classification Society Class NK. However, it is finally necessary that we have international safety standards and rules to be used ammonia as marine fuel to promote decarbonization widely in the shipping industry. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nakamura, for a very efficient presentation. And we are now going into the last one in this block, which is Mr. Simon Bergulf, Director of Regulatory Affairs of AP Møller Mærsk, to present his views on decarbonization of shipping, new fuels, new regulatory framework, and new reality around the corner. Mr. Bergulf, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and I will do my best to stay in the time limit accounted. Let me see if I can share my screen. Someone has first two closed. There you go. Thank you. Hopefully you can all see the screen now. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you. Great. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, esteemed delegates and ladies and gentlemen. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm the last one speaking, so I will try to round up a little bit also on what's been said by the excellent interventions that have been before me. If anything, let me just start to say that this is a fantastic opportunity, and it just shows the amount of competition and focus there is in the industry to move forward on this important agenda. It's been really super interesting up until now. Thank you very much. Let me just quickly talk a little bit about Maersk and who we are. Maersk is for those who are not familiar with the company, we're a logistics and transport services company. We operate globally. We have 70 terminals, but also operate over 750 vessels. And that amount of vessels, of course, comes with a significant environmental footprint, as we consume 11.6 million tons of fuel a year as a company. That amount of fuel means that we also had a strong incentive to reduce our fuel consumption and also reduce our climate footprint. We've been active in this field for over a decade, and this culminated in 2018 with the decision at highest level at Maersk to come and adopt our decarbonization strategy, which was aiming at a net zero by 2050. That strategy also aimed to have a commercially viable net zero vessel on the seas before 2030. And in 2018, a lot of people came to us and were very interested in collaborating, and we thanked them for the strong interest. Another group of people came and said that it was a moonshot that was not achievable. We are now 2 years later, and after you've heard from the other speakers as well, I think that we can all agree that it's no longer a moonshot at all. Things have changed so quickly and so exponentially over the past 2 years that we also internally at Maersk have to ask ourselves whether we don't need to accelerate our own strategy, as been said by my CEO recently. So watch that space. The strategy that we built up was built on 4 core pillars. The first one was the design of carbon neutral vessels. And very honestly, after the work that we put in for the past decade, we have to say that the technical means of reducing your CO2 emissions are drying out for container shipping. And it's really going to be about the new fuels. So that's the second pillar of our strategy, which is to drive the innovation in the new fuels and ensure that we have these new fuels for shipping. We believe that the time of having one general fuel for shipping is over. We are likely to have a situation where we will have a number of different fuels. We don't know which one will be the silver bullet or which ones will be the silver bullets. But what we know is that they're going to be likely far more expensive than the fuels that we are sailing on today. So that is an important point that I will come back to afterwards in terms of the pricing. I have to say it's also the first time that I'm working as a governmental affairs specialist and actually advocating for a lot of research and R&D into another sector than mine. But it is true that most of the R&D will have to come from the fuel supplies, as was also shown by the chicken and egg graph by the presenter just before me. The third pillar that we have in our strategy is the one that touches on our customers. And that's actually one of the points that hasn't been touched on up until now in the discussions that we've had here. But in order to be successful in our transitions, we also need to make sure that we bring along our customers on this journey. A lot of things have happened again over the past 2 years. We launched a product called Eco Deliver, which is based on the use of used cooking oil as a biofuel, as Mr. Ducot was also presenting from Good Fuels. It has been challenging. I think the challenges that Mr. Ducot presented were we had the same in terms of getting the approvals and making sure that we could use it, but we also had exactly the same successes. The clients and customers were very interested in working with us. And there's big fundamental difference that we've seen now is that when we are negotiating tendering contracts, we're no longer sitting solely with the logistics person, but we're also sitting with the sustainability person from the client side. And the clients and the customers are now ready actually to put the money where the mouth is. And that's a big difference compared to only a decade ago, so to say. And the final pillar of our strategy is the one on regulatory affairs. And that's the one where the work of this organization is so hugely important. And I'll come back to that in the later slide. I've been asked also to touch on our current priority fuel beds. And here they are. These are the 4 current priority fuel beds for Maersk. As you will see, and I touched on it, biodiesel is one of the ones that we started with. It's been surprisingly good in the sense that the large vessels that we've tried biofuels on and that we've mixed up to 40–50% of biofuels have actually had no problems whatsoever in operating. So truly a very good drop-in fuel available now. But the question mark here is who gets it? Who gets the biodiesel? Which are the industries and the sectors that are privileged to get those? We see today that there's a big fight for the biofuels. Our opinion is, of course, that the harder to abate sectors need to be the ones that are privileged in getting this and prioritized in getting these fuels. I think that when it comes to road transport, for example, the pathway to decarbonization is a lot clearer than when it comes to aviation and shipping. Our second bet is methanol, and a very interesting presentation as well by Mr. Hexter. As shown already in operations, safe to use, no need for refrigeration, but we do have a question around the scalability of this fuel, and we do have a question around the production of it, which does rely on recycled carbon or carbon capture, and there's a need for progress there. But again, as things are moving exponentially, it will happen. Our third bet is what we call lignin fuels, and that's a new biofuel that we're working with a number of partners on, where we are using a residue from biomass from the pulp and paper industry called lignin, which today is really a waste product, and mixing it into an alcohol-based fuel. This would actually lower the price of the alcohol-based fuel substantially, and we would have a price competitive fuel. It's still in development stages. It's promising. We have still question on scalability and infrastructure, but it is one that we firmly believe can deliver. And the last one is ammonia. Only the fully zero emission fuel that we have on our fuel bet here, because it doesn't have a carbon molecule. But there are a number of questions here around safety and toxicity, infrastructure. There are also questions around, and I think that was raised by one of the other panelists as well, the needs for our seafarers to be trained extensively to handle this. The training on LNG is one thing, the training on ammonia would be completely different. And then we are dependent on the maturity of the electrolyzer technology, but to be fair, that's also true for some of our other fuel beds. So this is a quick review of what we are focusing on as Maersk now. And now this is my last slide on the regulatory challenges, and one that I wanted to bring here. I think you've heard it also from a number of other panelists today. We really need action now. It has no doubt for Maersk that 2021 will be an absolute key year for the IMO. We know and hope that the IMO will deliver on progress, substantial progress in 2021 and on the 2018 strategy that was adopted at IMO. IMO really needs to leapfrog. It needs to demonstrate leadership, and it needs to open up the difficult discussion. We have to stop talking about shaving a percentage off in here. We really have to start now looking into transition. We have closed or close to closing the short-term measures last year. We still have some work there, but let's look forward a little further. We need to secure the RD&D. The deployment is very important here. What we're talking about here is no longer actually support for CAPEX, but support for OPEX. Here, the industry's IMRB proposal would be a very good litmus test for the organization to see whether that can be agreed upon and help actually push these new fuels into the market and close this competitiveness gap between the different types of fuels. And we need to start looking at market-based measures. And I know this is a big one. I know this is a difficult discussion, but if we want a chance to actually have a market-based measure in place by the end of this decade, we have to start opening up that discussion, because it's going to take time. And it needs to be future-proof. It needs to be solid enough to withstand maybe high ambitions in 2023, but also the whole life cycle assessments discussion that we also need to have when we're looking at the fuels. We need to look at mechanism to reward first movers. You have a number of them on the panelists today. They need to actually be rewarded for the risks that they're taking and the pilots that they're making. And we also need to raise the lower bar. And that comes to the last point also in terms of enforcement. I think we learned a lot from IMO 2020 that enforcement wasn't a given and that it cannot be an afterthought. So it's one of the things that need to be built into the discussions that we have now. Let me finish by saying we cannot really rely on the normal way of doing things in IMO. This is an unprecedented challenge, so we need to be creative. I think the IMO is working very hard in that direction, and we need to think a little bit outside of the box. Can we have a compliance on fleet basis, for example, is one of the things that's being discussed to really reward the ship owners that have a zero emission ship in their fleet. I'd like to finish just by saying that please take this slide as a words of encouragement from the industry. We are fully behind you. We're fully supportive of all the work in the IMO. We're really rooting for you guys to come forward with an ambitious strategy, and we look forward to continue to contribute and work with you. I will now leave it here and turn to the interesting Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Berger. Thank you for presenting the Maersk experiences so far and your strategy for the future. And indeed, your last slide reminded me that I have not had lunch today. So thank you. It was very delicious. Now, let's move into the Q&A session. After having listened to 5 very interesting presentations, I'm sure there are several questions. We will do it like this. First, I would like to invite the Secretariat to read out some of the questions which have been received in writing and pose them to the presenters. So therefore, I will now first turn the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, and good day to everyone, depending on where you're joining us from, be it here in Zoom, be it on YouTube. Both in Zoom and both on YouTube, there's quite an active discussion going on, quite a lot of questions that are being posed. And on behalf also of the IMO Secretariat, we would like to thank, of course, all the panelists for their extremely interesting presentations. We have seen a lot of concrete data, a lot of information that, of course, will help us in the regulatory discussions that are ahead of us, as was mentioned by quite a number of the speakers today. Mr. Moderator, I will start maybe with some questions directed to the first 3 speakers. So to Mr. Leclerc from CMA-CGM, to Mr. Hexter from Waterfront, and Mr. Ducot from Eastern Pacific Shipping. And I think particularly for the first 2 speakers, there have been a lot of questions in the Q&A related to the life cycle assessment. So some of the questions have been answered already in the chat, but I think it would be quite helpful if the speakers can give a little bit more information of how they see and what is the importance of life cycle assessment guidelines. We have seen questions, for instance, about how to calculate methane slip, also how to calculate methanol slip, how to take into account assumptions of GHG and CO2 emissions along the supply chain, particularly for LNG and methanol. There have been questions asked about how do you calculate CO2 emissions if you have different sources of gas, for instance, being mixed, so natural gas mixed with biogas. So it would be good if Mr. Leclerc and Mr. Hexter can give a bit more indication of life cycle assessment. Now, for Mr. Ducot, there have been a number of questions related to NOx, nitrogen oxide emissions related to the use of biofuels. So, Mr. Moderator, back to you. I think we can start with those questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hondas, for providing those questions. And we then start by giving the floor to Mr. Leclerc to respond to the relevant question. And after his response, we turn to Mr. Hexter and then to Mr. Ducot. Mr. Leclerc?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a challenge to have a global overview, and all of us knows that this is a challenge. There are now references which are getting clearer and clearer. For example, the gas depletion based on 100 years. So there are some references which are enabling us to set up some baseline and do the proper calculation. And if we take the latest norm, which is active at this moment, based on 100 years, the greenhouse gas emission benefit of an LNG powered vessel will be like 13%. Of course, there's no unified way of doing it. And I think this is one of the key topics. Of course, the supply chain has to use the same references. And of course, we now have measurement and we should align with the references. So again, the life cycle is a key topic. And of course, we should not take it from our own activity, but with the intention of having an overview all the time.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your answer. Can I now turn to Mr. Hexter, please?
Thank you for the question. With regards to slip, when it comes to methanol, the engines for consuming methanol, we use a pilot fuel rather than a spark plug to ignite the methanol. And this ensures a stable and fully complete combustion. So there is no fuel slip with the methanol engines. So just say that at the beginning. I agree with the previous speaker. Right now, when it comes to alignment on how we calculate life cycle reductions, there is a need for more alignment. And that's one of the actions that we see coming forward, is we need to align the political will for carbon reduction with the regulatory measure and support. So today, we could benefit from more clarity on how, as an industry, we have a standard calculation for reduction around carbon intensity and measurement.
Thank you, Mr. Hexter. I will now turn to Mr. Decaux, please. Yeah,
I think the question was, just to recap, the question was whether we've observed a higher NOx emissions from the biofuel. This is a well-known factor for biofuel, that it comes with higher NOx. In this specific case, we've asked our fuel provider, Good Fuels, to work with MAN, the engine manufacturer, to give us data on the NOx emission. We don't yet have that. But one point, I like to reiterate on that front is that again, there's no perfect solution today. LNG today comes with methane slip. Biofuel comes with higher NOx. Hydrogen, ammonia are not there. So the question is, what's the best solution today? And again, I like to repeat that we should not let the perfect be the enemy of the good in this quest of where we just stand still and do nothing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Decaux. Now let's turn to the other questions which is provided in answer before I give the floor to you to have all questions as well. I saw myself here questions related to the ammonia on relation to toxicity. So can I then turn to Mr. Nakamura and ask your reply to the questions raised by Fernando Alberto Gomez da Costa, which he says, thank you for the presentation. As you told, ammonia is a toxic fuel. How can we protect the crews on board ships using ammonia as a fuel? Are there already procedures for that? Could you reply to the question, Mr. Nakamura?
Thank you very much. And at this moment, we have ammonia transportation vessel. We have actually. At this moment, we have already had some processes, proper processes to handle ammonia on ship. So on the as cargo, but it is as cargo. So on the what we have to come up with is a kind of safety rule to govern the bunkering of the ammonia and also the keeping ammonia in the fuel tank. So this is additional things. We need to come up with some kind of new criteria or standard, safety standard, to make sure that the crew is safe in the engine room and also the bunkering operation. So that is a new area we have to make sure. So I think at this moment in the ammonia gas carrier, it is a kind of at the same time, it is an LPG gas carrier. So in that cases, and we have already have some special rules, and the crews have wear some kind of special clothes, and also the crew have to comply with the handling manual of the ammonia when they transport the ammonia as cargo. So maybe we have to apply or take advantage of such kind of examples at this moment to come up with a new rules. That is my question. And also, we are now in the middle of, creating a new idea for the standard process. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nakamura. And also, the last question I will read out myself before I open the floor for questions is from the questions and our answers function is from Mr. Dimitris Moniotis, related to, which goes to Mr. Bergulf. He asked, any reason why you have totally discarded hydrogen as a potential future fuel? So, Mr. Bergulf, can you please respond to that question?
Yes, and the response is to do with the needed energy for the vessels that we have and the size of our vessels. So hydrogen would not work for what we are doing right now, because it would simply have to take up too much space in the vessel as it stands. That doesn't mean that hydrogen doesn't have a key role in the creation of the e-fuels that we're looking at. So we have not dismissed hydrogen. We've just dismissed fuel cells and hydrogen as a direct way of transport, so to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bergulf. And now I would like to open for all questions. So what you do is you go to the chat function and request for the floor, please. Just state who you are and request for the floor, and then you will be given an opportunity to ask a question. We give it a couple of seconds and see who will come up. Well, while we are waiting for requests for the floor, can you then also please allow me to ask a question while we are waiting for others to take the floor? Mr. Nakamura, in your presentation, you highlighted the issue of the scalability of hydrogen-based fuels and the importance of short-sea shipping as a first step towards a wider uptake in international shipping. Could you further develop on this and let us know to what extent national action plans, as one example, which also the IMO have a resolution on encouraging the development of national action plan, could play a role in phasing in alternative fuels for deep sea shipping? Mr. Nakamura?
Okay, thank you very much for Mr. Moderator. Okay, in Japan, a discussion is going on ammonia usage for the power generation sector. So, and the Japanese government we have at this moment the talking session between Japanese government, METI and MLIT, and private sectors like a shipping company or energy company or trading house. So, and we have had lots of discussion so far for this 1 year. So now, Japanese government plan is to introduce ammonia for the power sector. So, and the target is 3 million tons in 2030. So 3 million tons of ammonia are expected to be imported to Japan for the coal combustion with coal firing. And 2050, 30 million tons of ammonia will be imported to Japan, especially for the usage of ammonia for the power generation. Maybe it is a combined cycle, combined gas turbine cycle, and the 100% combustion, higher combustion percentage of the combustion with coal, in order to reduce the usage of the coal, to reduce then the CO2 emission from the coal firing plant. So that is a target of the Japanese government and also the private sectors at this moment. So that is very important for the shipping industry. Once it is materialized, I think the shipping industry will be able to utilize ammonia in a lower price, thanks to the scalability of the supply chain. So the supply chain will be set up as first for the usage of ammonia for the power generation sector. Then we can utilize ammonia for the marine fuel. That is discussion in Japan. We have in Japan type of that is a discussion we have at this moment in Japan. Is it?
Thank you very much, Mr. Nakamura, for the very clear answer to the question. I can now see that in the chat function that Mr. Sunil Krishna Kumar has a question to Mr. Paul Hexter. So you can have the floor, Mr. Krishna Kumar. You can turn on your camera and your microphone, and you can pose the question yourself to Mr. Hexter. Mr. Krishna Kumar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I would like to first of all give my thanks to all the presenters for a very informative presentations. My question is specifically to Mr. Paul Hexter. Thank you for your presentation on the use of ethanol. We would like to ask kind of the same question that was aimed at ammonia with regards to the toxicity of ethanol. I think you mentioned in your slides that you have more than 100,000 hours of operating ships which are fueled with ethanol. Have you faced any particular challenges with using methanol as a fuel with regards to its toxicity? And have you had to ensure that there are extra measures that have been put in place for crew safety for these ships? Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, safety obviously is a priority when you're dealing with any fuel. Methanol has a low flash point, so based on that, it cannot be stored in the engine room. So from a safety enhancement perspective, methanol is the fuel delivery system is a double wall piping from the storage tank outside of the engine room into the engine itself. So that double wall piping has sensors and the ability to purge in the event of any release. So we call the technology as a fail-to-safe system. So if there's any issue with the secondary fuel delivery system or the methanol supply system to the engine, then the system will be purged with nitrogen and immediately revert to whatever conventional fuel the ship was running on the next engine piston stroke. So from a safety perspective, we have double wall piping anywhere in the engine room to prevent exposure to the crew, storage outside of the engine room, and a purging system to flush the secondary fuel delivery system with nitrogen in the event of an escape. MAN have done additional training for the technology. And then for our ships on board, we have methanol safe handling training that the crew do even when conventional fueled ships. So as a cargo and as a fuel, the crew on board are doing methanol safe handling training on a regular basis.
Thank you, Mr. Hexter. Then we have a question raised by Mr. Allwright, Gavin Allwright, to all presenters, to the panelists. And in order to save time, I just read it out myself. It is relating to the infrastructure. Yes, tomorrow we will have a block on infrastructure. But let us now listen to how the perspective of the shipping industry on this one. Your expectations, and we take the timing of rolling out the infrastructure for the various types of fuels. It took quite many years for LNG. So if we start with Mr. Bergulf and take it in that order, Mr. Bergulf and Mr. Nakamura, and then in that order. What's your expectations on the infrastructure for your best guess on fuels?
Yeah, and that is literally the $1 million question, right? But I have to say I am a lot more optimistic than when we looked at the LNG infrastructure. This is not a shipping only question when it comes to infrastructure for zero carbon fuels. So I would have to say that I do not expect that it will take 15 years. The most difficult question is going to be which ones are we focusing on, and that's back to the chicken and egg discussion, right? But I think that we're moving very close to having it identified a number of fuels, and some of the infrastructure there can be used for a number of them, similarly. So for me, I am not as negative. I'm a more positive person in essence, and I believe there's going to be a relatively quick rollout of the infrastructure, and not 15 years for sure.
Thank you. And Mr. Nakamura, we know that ammonia is a widely used product all around the world, but will it be available in ports for shipping? Do you think so?
Yes, but I think when you think about the infrastructure for the new fuel, I think we can learn a kind of lessons from the LNG experience. So LNG is now starting to be used as marine fuel, but the first and the LNG supply chain was established by the joint collaboration among all supply chain players. It's like, supplier, the LNG developer, and also the off-taker, and also the shipping company, and also the engineering company, etc. So, and also the banking industry. So, and when we establish the infrastructure of the supply chain, I think the most important thing is the collaboration all through the supply chain. So that is a kind of lesson we have to learn from the history in LNG. Is it?
Thank you very much. And going then to Mr. Ducor on the availability of biofuel for shipping, do you think shipping will get the amount needed?
At the moment, the shipping industries, I think the availability of biofuel dedicated to maritime is around 2% of what the shipping industry needs. So it's a fraction. It's a drop in the ocean, literally, or actually not in the ocean, in the engine. But with smart rules, regulations, economic incentive, carbon tax, or any other measures that regulators can put in place, we know that these things can move very quickly. The same way that my colleague at Maersk was saying that I think we all got positively surprised by how quickly the LNG bunkering infrastructure developed itself. I think as an industry, we know that if the right framework is there and people are moving together, things can happen in a couple of years, and that's reassuring.
Thank you very much. And then we turn to Mr. Hexter on methanol. Will we have the amount needed?
I think right now we're seeing a lot of interest post the IMO 2020 regulations. Now, as we progress towards 2030 and 2050 targets, there's a lot more interest in methanol and the other alternative solutions. It's a very exciting stage for the industry. When it comes to the chicken and the egg that was discussed, I think we said that the infrastructure from a bunkering perspective and storage and transportation for methanol as a liquid product should be easy to implement at relatively low cost. Like any of the green solutions or renewable solutions, green methanol market is immature and needs scale to become cost competitive. But this is the same for any of the green solutions. So what we need right now is the industry to support some transition. For example, conventional methanol moving towards whatever the ultimate solution may be.
Thank you very much. And I now look at my clock, and I need actually to round up this block myself. Let me just do it by saying it has been extremely interesting to actually see that there are experiences gained out there. And the comment I can have is that without identifying the challenges and taking the challenges seriously, and finding professional partners in order to resolve the challenges, we will not make it. And the point is that you have actually identified those challenges, which makes me an optimist. So thank you very much for all the work you have done and for presenting this to us. There will be then, I guess, for the questions not being responded to yet, I guess the Secretariat will provide them to the presenters, and there can be then responses in writing. Now, and we have just on time, and let me then have a change of panelists. So can we just do that quickly now, and the Secretariat can give me information on when the new panelists are on. Thank you. So it's now a new 5 presenters going into the next block, which is building alternative fuel-ready ships, state of play in shipyards, ship designers, and technology providers. And here again, we have 10 minutes presentations from each presenter. Now, I will just start to give the floor to the first presenter, Mr. Gusheng Peng, which is Senior Engineer from the Dalian Shipbuilding Industry Company in China, to present the concept design of an ammonia-fueled 23,000 TEU ultra-large container ship. Mr. Peng, the floor is yours.
All right. Hello, everyone. So glad to be here to share with you our thoughts and activities on the green technology from a shipyard's perspective. My slides includes 3 parts. The first, a simple perspective on the green technology development. The second, brief introduction of green technology activities that a typical Chinese shipyard DSIC is working on. And then the main part, ammonia as fuel. The industry is coming to a consensus that alternative fuel technology is the most effective way to achieve the future low carbon emission shipping. But it is also well known that comparing to heavy fuel oil, the application of alternative fuel causes increase in CapEx and a large probability of OpEx increase, considering that the ammonia or hydrogen may be derived from the conventional fossil fuel. The fuel replacement itself does not save fuel. So we believe that alternative fuel and the energy saving technology will go hand in hand in future green shipping. In this view, our shipyard, Dalian Shipbuilding Corporation of CSIC, has been making efforts as follows. In 2018, we delivered the world's first aerofoil-assisted VLCC, and the second generation aerofoil-assisted VLCC under construction will be delivered next year. We have been exploring the application of air lubrication on VLCC with partners for several years. And now the air layer drag reduction system will be installed on one of our handling orders and planned to be delivered in 2023. And for the alternative fuel, the world first LNG fueled VLCC reaching EDF phase 3 will be delivered in this year by our shipyard. Together with Man Energy Solution and the Lloyd's Register, DSIC started to explore zero carbon solution with ammonia as fuel since 2019. The aim of the GIP is to develop a zero carbon 23,000 TEU container vessel. The AIP was granted by Lloyd's Register in the same year at Maritime exhibition hosted in Shanghai. Last year, the design is further developed for more engineering details. The pre-study before starting the GIP was to choose an alternative fuel, taking into many aspects. For example, the environmental performance, the fuel flexibility, the fuel availability, the infrastructure, the production flexibility, the safety, and so on. We found ammonia the closest alternative to an ideal fuel. As also said by IEA, ammonia as fuel is the most promising solution. The main dual fuel engine LGIP was adopted to be the main engine. The heat ratio of ammonia is more than 90% at each loading during operation. Combined with pilot fuel using biodiesel, zero carbon emission can be realized. Also, we look forward to using catalyst to crack a small portion of ammonia into nitrogen and hydrogen. Then the pure hydrogen ignites and burns with the ammonia. For the electricity, we can assume there will be, and I think there must be marine generator burning ammonia soon later. For now, soft generator with suitable propeller configuration can be a solution. MAN, Wärtsilä, and Siemens has confirmed the availability of this kind of equipment. A typical route for an ultra-large container vessel, the voyage from Asia to Europe, is considered. This figure shows the load and the discharge ports along the route. We can envisage that bunkering from port to vessel or vessel to vessel will be more feasible and easier to be realized in near future. We know that ammonia fuel requires larger tank space than LNG. By weighing various factors, the multiple refueling, the maximum container intakes, cost efficiency, suitable operation speed, the fuel tank capacity is finally decided to be 19,500 cubic meter. It satisfies with a single trip endurance at the speed of 20.5 knots. Together with the 3,200 cubic meter biodiesel tank, the vessel also can sail at higher speed for a single route or lower speed for a round route. In terms of the storage tank, IMO Type A, Type B, C, and the membrane storage tanks are investigated. As for this vessel, we conclude that IMO Type A tank is quite suitable because of the following advantages. It has high capacity efficiency, suitable for minus 34-degree design temperature, low cost, and has been widely used on LPG tankers. The fuel supply system is similar to that of LNG fuel and also has its own unique feature. The liquid ammonia in storage tank will be pressurized by low pressure pump and then the high pressure pump to 70 bar, heated to 25 to 55 Celsius degree using water glycol as heating medium, and then goes into the engine through the valve train. BOG from ammonia storage tank will be reliquefied. Series of safety measures are considered for ammonia fuel system operation, especially considering the toxicity, the low temperature storage, corrosion, and explosion. Then move to the arrangement of the low flash point fuel supply system. The ammonia tank and bunker station is arranged directly under accommodation area to minimize the container intake loss. The liquefaction unit is located in a separated room close to tank doom room on second deck. A separated fuel supply room is arranged beside engine room to optimize the fuel system configuration and reduce the safety risks. Double wide piping and ventilation system is applied for the fuel piping from fuel tank to the main engine. Two vent masts are located in forehead and after part. The forward one is for bunkering stations, tank, and liquefaction units, and the after one is for fuel supply system and the main engine.
Mr. Penn, is it just to remind you have 1 minute left on your presentation?
All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
So regarding the cost that the market cares most, based on our investigation, the capex gap between LNG fuel and ammonia fuel is about $9 million. The cost of storage tank and the fuel gas supply system contributes the most. The OPEX is still weak right now because the uncertainties of fuel price and the carbon tax. And still, we have got some perspective on the uncertainty of use ammonia as fuel, but I think all these aspects have been talking about by the guest of last panel. So I'd like just to finish my slides. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for all.
Thank you very much for a very interesting presentation, which is very specific in relation to what you are doing, and it will be very interesting to follow your success further. Let's now turn to Dr. Yongkyun An from the Korea Maritime Transportation Safety Authority to present the Korean perspective, the 2030 Green Ship K initiative. The floor is yours, Dr. An.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, everyone in the world. First of all, I would like to tell you how honored I am to be a speaker of the IMO Symposium. My name is Yongkyun An, who is working for the KOMSA, Korea Maritime Transportation Safety Authority. Let me give you the presentation about the Korean National Plan for Green Ship K. This slide shows the content today. Let me explain what we have planning to proceed with the green ship strategy from background to expected effect. All of you may be interested in the Green Ship K project for the sustainable shipping and shipbuilding industries. The Republic of Korea enacted a law, the Act on Development and Popularization of Green Ship, to facilitate eco-friendly shipping as well as comply with the environmental regulations. By this law, the Minister of Oceans and Fishery and Minister of Industry have to formulate the national plan, including the R&D roadmap, long-term objectives, and infrastructure, etc. According to the national plan, the South Korean government decided to invest $870 million for the innovative R&D program of green ship technologies over a new decade last December. As you know, the government also proceeded with the Green New Deal to achieve net zero emissions for the sustainable future. One of the promising strategies is to use green mobility on a road, at sea, and in the sky. We have three core goals about the green ship technology: carbon-free, low carbon, and localization of the existing technologies. In the first step, we are going to improve low carbon technology like LNG, mixed fuel, and energy saving as bridge technology. After that, carbon-free technology will be mature for the shipping industry. We are planning to reach the global standard by using R&D product. Onshore testing facilities will verify the new technology like green fuels, electrification, cryogenic service, new hull forms, etc. This slide is the key point of the Green Ship K promotion strategy. We will build a marine test bed to prove the technical feasibility. We may have successful combinations of green fuel, power machinery, propulsion type, etc. during the R&D process. A marine test bed will give you the trust in terms of the safety as well as reliability of the Green Ship K technology. When you need to test the fuel mixture of gas oil and ammonia, the marine test bed takes the combination and evaluate the technical feasibility. When you want to know the performance of a high-fin gas turbine, the test bed ship may show you the potential for the marine application. When you need to check the reliability of electric propulsion, the test bed ship can provide the test result. The Republic of Korea will build a green fuel supply chain. On LNG bunkering capability will grow up to 1.4 million tons per year in 2030. Ship-to-ship bunkering, as well as terminal-to-ship bunkering systems, will be established in the major ports in the South Korea. An alternative maritime power system will be installed for fully electric ships, step by step. Carbon-free fuels are also available from a small-scale supply to large-scale bunkering. For market activation, the government-owned ships should be converted into green ships. New ships will be built with the eco-friendly technology, where the existing ships in service will take the exhaust cleaning technology. The government facilitates the green ship ecosystem by using Green New Deal fund, incentive, and tax reduction. By 2030, we have 528 green ships around the seas of the Korean Peninsula. The IMO has a rigorous philosophy of greenhouse gas reduction. We have to cut off 50% of carbon dioxide in global shipping. I believe the Green Ship K strategy will make a great contribution toward the sustainable marine sectors by decarbonization. Please keep in mind, the Green Ship K becomes with you. Yeah, thank you very much for your attention. Let me finish my presentation here.
Thank you very much, Dr. An, and Wow, clearly many things are happening in Republic of Korea. So thank you very much for your presentation. And I'm sure there are questions to you. So I would like to remind participants that you can pose your questions in the questions and answer icon as we go. So we can read out the question after all the presentations. Let us now move on to Mr. Takeo Akamatsu, Deputy General Manager, Marine Department of Itochu Corporation, Japan, to present the integrated project of development of ammonia fuel ship by fuel supply chain. Mr. Akamatsu, please, the floor is yours.
Okay. Okay, so thank you very much. Today, we would like to make a presentation about the integrated project for development of ammonia fuel ship with fuel supply chain. So first of all, we would like to introduce ourselves, Itochu Corporation, which is not a shipyard or not manufacturers. We are a trading company in Japan, and we are handling various commodity and service in the market. And myself, belonging to the marine department under machinery company, which is handling the ship trading business, finance, ship owning, and the investment for LNG carrier and offshore sectors. And for this ammonia marine project, we need to tie up with our internal company colleagues, who is handling many other business here. Then last year, we launched integrated project with partners. So as you can see this slide, we made a partnership with Imabari, which is the biggest shipyard in Japan, MM Energy Solution, Mitsui E&S Machinery, and Class NK. So for first four company is a kind of a technical developer and to develop ammonia fueled vessel. And the Itochu Enix and the Itochu Corporation, we are the party to develop the commercial side, especially for integrated network. So for this particular project, everybody pointed out chicken and egg. So we agree, and in order to develop this kind of a project, the most important issue is to make a partnership in each industries. So that is our role. Which means, so as you can see this image, we are working with manufacturer side in the shipbuilding industries, but also we need to discuss with the shipping company and the shippers and the users, and bunkering side, and the fuel supply side, producers. Therefore, now, year of 2020, we made many presentations to many potential partners in each industries. So then now we have a number of partners who showed interest in our development. Like if we talk about the bunkering side, we set up a partnership in Singapore, and also Singapore government now started to study the ammonia bunkering safety issue. Therefore, we also tie up with Nanyang Technological University, who make a study for that. And I think in Japan also, we set up a similar partnership, and then we will have this kind of discussion as well. And as to our partners at the shipyard side in Japan, so last month, January 2021, Imabari made a joint venture with GMU, which is the second biggest shipyard in Japan, for design making and sales promotion for all commercial vessels. Therefore, for the from 2021, our shipyard partner is Nihon Shipyard. And then we set up a target project as a pilot. And as you can see, in order for us to prepare supply chain, fuel supply chain, we need a number of the vessel. Therefore, we decided to put 10 vessels in total as a package. And the vessel type, we expect bulk carriers, Capesize or Kamsarmax, or tankers like a VLCC or ML type product tankers. So now the shipyard are preparing a design concept for each types. And then under discuss, we'll make a discussion with potential shippers, which we should select to achieve 10 vessels as a pilot project. And delivery-wise, according to MAM, they made an official comment. They tried to deliver first engine in 2024. So in such case, theoretically speaking, we may deliver the first ammonia vessel in 2025, but subject to rules. Because everybody understands that there's no international rules as to the ammonia fueled vessel. Therefore, we intend to obtain alternative design approval under SOLAS. Otherwise, we cannot deliver the first vessel in 2025. And also, ammonia bunkering, this is also, we have to prepare for the pilot project. Therefore, we intend to set up a bunkering port in Singapore, Japan, and maybe some others. But in any cases, for further development, key factor is cost and rule. So it means we need a support from shippers, and we need establishment of rule and regulation for ship design and bunkering, and economical incentive for shippers and ship owners, how we can encourage them to go ahead together. So then as to the bunkering network, so our plan is to set up a global network. So now we are focusing on Japan, Singapore, and then expand to like Malaysia, Europe, Middle East, US, or worldwide basis. And basic concept is we set up a partnership, local partner, with existing ammonia facility. So that is a very important concept, because we don't need to make a new investment to install ammonia infrastructure from scratch, because we have a lot of facility already. So that is our concept. And then target for ammonia procurement. Of course, through our discussions, we found that we can take current specification without substantial modifications, but of course, subject to further study. And one of the biggest issues is how to supply a better ammonias, because at the time of productions, everybody understands that ammonia have CO2 emissions. Therefore, we set up the benchmark. We try to supply the ammonia net CO2 emission to be less 1 CO2 ton against the production of 1 ammonia tons. So that is a kind of the benchmark. Of course, in the future, if once we have a green ammonias, and then we can take green ammonia as a blend, or maybe 100% green ammonia in the future. So that is the idea. But of course, as to the commercial terms, today we don't have any commercial terms as a fuel of the ammonia. Therefore, we need to discuss with all parties what should be a price index. But of course, that is a matter of discussion at the time of commercial pilot project. And then lastly, for regulations, because we do understand that cost and regulation is a key for decarbonization in shipping industries. Of course, first of all, we need safety rules, but in order for us to encourage the shippers to go ahead, we need more clear pictures. First is emission control. Of course, IMO is now under discussion about EEDI, EEXI, CII, not only for new building, but also for existing vessel. but we'd like to have a more clear picture, long-term plan, including rule and regulations. Otherwise, the ship owner cannot set up their long-term plan of fleet replacement. And also, we do understand that how we should make a linkage with the country's responsibility to confirm how it works. Therefore, I think that is one of the issue, how to set up a guideline as an IMO. And the second is more commercial side, how we should encourage or convince end user to go ahead with this kind of the project. So we need a definitely incentive. Of course, we understand we need a fund. So in such case, now IMO is under discussion about IMO RF, for example. And then if IMO have some kind of a fund, and then maybe incentive can be provided from such fund. Well, if no fund, and then we think that something substantial carbon levy or the similar concept should be introduced. Otherwise, no reason for shippers to take this kind of the vessel. So that is our idea. So thank you very much for your time today, and this is our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akamatsu, for a very inspiring presentation. And I'm sure, sir, there are questions to you in the Q&A, so we will come back to that. Now, a lot have been said on various energy sources, but are there energy engines which can digest all these types of energy? So we will now turn to Mr. Ralf Oldenburg, head of Euromot delegation at IMO, to share his views on building future-proof marine engines. Mr. Oldenburg, the floor is yours.
I need to. Can you see my screen, sir?
Soon, I guess. So far, my screen is black, so I think you have shared something, but I cannot see your presentation. Perhaps the Secretariat can assist. We can see the presentation of Euromot.
Can you see it?
I think the advice, Mr. Oldenburg, is that you need to restart your sharing. So just take your time and then we move on when you have restarted the sharing. That is the advice from the Secretariat. So, okay, what I suggest, Mr. Oldenburg, is that the Secretariat can share their screen. So then you just, when you see your presentation, you then turn to the Secretariat and ask them to change the slide every time. So can the Secretariat share the screen?
Yes, we will do that. 1 second. There it is.
Now we can see it, and Mr. Oldenburg, you can have the floor, and then you turn to just give a message when you change slide. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir, and thank you very much for the kind assistance. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. Let me first thank IMO for the opportunity to speak to you today. The next slide, please. Euromot holds for many years a consultative status at IMO, and participates actively in the discussions of various committees and subcommittees, such as MSC, MEPC, PPR, and CCC. Euromod has an international scope, as you can see here by our membership. In the following minutes, we would like to present the views of our association and its member companies on future-proof marine engines. Generally, the range of engine comprises of very different sizes and technologies used in a variety of sectors and thousands of different installations, such as non-road stationary applications, and of course, marine engines, including coastal shipping, recreational crafts, and seagoing ships of all categories. Next slide, please. Development of marine technology can be split into several pillars, as shown here at the screen. You can see here alternative fuels and technologies, basically in the focus of the symposium today and tomorrow. Efficiency and emission technologies, electrification and hybridization, and automatization and digitalization under the name of smart ship. Next slide, please. The next slide brings us to hybridization and intelligent power management systems, which are very effective short-term measures to improve ships' efficiency. As illustrated, systems are available for a broad range of applications. Ship owners and operators can rely on the high maturity and robustness of technologies. The systems provide further potential for reducing greenhouse gas emissions in a short-term perspective and are as well future-proof on a medium and long-term perspective in combination with low and zero carbon fuels. There will be no stranded assets due to this. Systems are available for both new build ships and retrofitting of existing ships. The pictures provide an overview of systems integrating engines with power take-off, power take-in, battery systems, and power control units on different ship types. Other combinations with energy converters are possible. Fuel flexibility is provided. Next slide, please. This slide shows the state-of-the-art LNG and LPG engines as used increasingly in marine applications. The technology is very mature and engines are available as dual fuel engines and gas engines for new builds or as retrofit solutions. LNG provides a superb energy density, in fact, the highest per mass of current marine fuels. In combination with a carbon content lower than fossil liquid fuels, LNG provides a substantial CO2 reduction. Lean burn dual fuel and gas engines are very efficient energy converters with high mechanical efficiency. Some methane is passed, however, through the conversion process of premixed engines. A considerable reduction of the slip has been demonstrated in recent years, with further improvement to be achieved in the upcoming years. Using of LNG or LPG provides an overall greenhouse gas reduction. With no or very minor adjustments, synthetic methane or biomethane may be used in engines. Further greenhouse gas reduction potential on a medium-term and long-term context can be achieved in this way. There are no stranded assets by using dual fuel or gas engine technologies. The pictures show example for LNG use in engines of different sizes and ship types and the real-life production scheme of synthetic methane. Next slide, please. Hydrogen is the basis for energy conversion processes and the building block of all addressed fuels. Engine manufacturers are considering the use of hydrogen as fuel directly injected in marine engines. As a first step, concepts of admixture hydrogen to other fuels, for example LNG, are currently being developed. Engines operating with pure hydrogen are on the roadmap as a further step. Advanced technical measures to control the combustion process are required to be implemented due to the broad explosion range of hydrogen. In addition, materials compatibility of metal components with hydrogen requires adaptation of the whole systems, not only of the engines. The pictures illustrate an engine on a testbed operated with an admixture of hydrogen with additional safety measures applied. Next slide, please. A range of engines for the use of methyl ethyl alcohols has been developed already some years ago. They are meanwhile available as mature products, readily available as short-term measures for new ships and as retrofit solution for the existing fleet. The typical fuels require moderate adaptations for their handling and storage. Safety concepts of engines need, however, to be adapted due to the chemical and physical properties of the fuels to appropriately cope with health, safety, and environmental requirements. Due to an energy content lower than fossil marine fuels, higher volumes have to be handled. As with all bio-derived fuels, it is important to duly consider their sourcing process and their well-to-wake balance. The slide shows practical examples here. Next slide, please. Another fuel under consideration is ammonia. Engine technology development is currently ongoing, and engines can be expected to be available on the market in the coming years for both new ships and as retrofit options for existing ships. Its energy content qualifies ammonia as marine fuel. As it does not contain any carbon, ammonia is an attractive alternative marine fuel option. However, nitrogen oxide and nitrous oxide emissions need to be taken into consideration. Where needed, exhaust after-treatment systems have to be adapted. There are moderate additional efforts required for handling and storage. Ammonia's toxicity must be adequately addressed in the engines and overall safety concepts for storage and transfer on board. The picture illustrates examples of engine technology under development and a possible roadmap. This brings us to slide 9. In this slide is a summary included which addresses our key issues and the most relevant prerequisites from engine manufacturers' perspective. As you can see, the combustion engines combine an outstanding endurance with high energy density, which is key as well for the use of future marine fuels, and which has been addressed already during further presentations. This is, of course, key. The IMO, MSC, and CCC subcommittees need to speed up the development of the IGF code. And we are of the view that more resources to be provided, especially to the CCC committee. As mentioned before, we have to make sure that in a short time frame, the presented fuel options can be included to the IGF code in guidelines which are associated to the code. Regulations have to be developed in a technology neutral way under consideration of state-of-the-art risk assessments. This is important to assure a broad technology which can be brought to the market and which can be developed in the future. Greenhouse gas intensity of fuels has to be considered in a well-to-wake approach. The future share of presented fuel options is at the time being unpredictable, even to us as engine manufacturers. Therefore, manufacturers are advancing the development of engine technology and systems for all presented fuel options. And finally, the sustainability of production of marine fuels, reliable supply to ships, and affordable prices is a challenge of the maritime energy transition from our perspective. Next slide, please. Here, I would like finally to thank a number of engine manufacturers which have provided the material which we have seen here in the presentation. And please note, in addition, the email address of the Euromod Secretariat for any further questions or comments referring to the presentation even at a later date. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you, sir, and thank you for to the Secretariat for the assistance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oldenburg, and I'm sure there will be questions to you, and participants can pose those in the Q&A bar. I will now turn to the last presenter, Mr. Gavin Allwright, Secretary General of the International Windship Association, to share his views on the uptake and market development of wind propulsion technologies. Mr. Allwright, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you see my slideshow there?
Yes, we can see your slides.
Okay, that's fantastic. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to thank the chairman and the IMO Secretariat for inviting me to come speak today. It's excellent to follow on from such a qualified and expert speakers today. So, and all of them on time as well. So I will try and endeavour to do that too. Okay, so the International Windship Association, just a very quick introduction. We have over 130 members and registered supporters all around the world. And we are primarily a not-for-profit organisation that is helping to facilitate the uptake of commercial wind propulsion systems. Very important that we focus on what is our target here. And one of the earlier presenters talked about the 1.5 degree target. That pretty much means that any ship that's designed today will be operating in a net zero emissions world. And we have about 8 years of business as usual carbon emissions if we wish to stay within that realm. Now, what can wind propulsion deliver? Or maybe we can look at this in a different way. What can wind engines deliver? Because that's really what we're talking about. They are zero emissions energy for a ship, and that component is available today. With retrofits, around 5 to 20% of the propulsive energy can be delivered, probably optimized up to 30%. But with optimized new builds, 50 to 80% or even more is potentially there. Obviously, that's going to include with some operational changes. I'll talk a little bit about that more later. And wind propulsion brings the other side to that sustainability sword of resilience along with efficiency. So it uncouples us from fuel to a degree and uncouples us from that those restrictions. And also, it's uniquely available to shipping. So very quickly talking about that direct application of wind power. We're talking, it's a primary renewable energy. Now, if this was actually a fuel that I was talking about in the commoditized burning fuel aspect, if I was to tell you that it was abundant, it was available all around the world today, it was delivered onto your ship at the point of use with no storage and no cost for the lifetime of the vessel, with no new infrastructure on land, I think the industry would generally be biting my hand off to deliver this fuel. But with wind propulsion, we've had some perspective issues, and there are also some challenges technologically, etc. But those are developing. We don't see this as a competition to secondary renewables, such as hydrogen, ammonia, etc. We actually see it very much as a complementary. And the next slide, that's exactly what I will talk about. So we approach this from a propulsion point of view, not a fuel-centric point of view. And this is something that we would like to be seeing much more appreciation and development within IMO, where we have a substantial wind component. So we call this the wave, wind plus activity, vessel plus eco-fuel. With wind delivering, say, 20 to 30% of the energy requirement for vessels across the fleet, coupled with activity, so operational optimization, and then vessel optimization with energy efficiency measures. We don't see wind as an energy efficiency measure. We see it as a propulsive energy provider. These three together, if we're looking at 20%, 20%, and 20%, which are probably conservative estimates, we can actually reduce that bunkering requirement down to, say, 40%. This would mean facilitating a quicker delivery of those fuels into the market and other systems. I'm not going to go through the technology toolbox, but I just wanted you to be aware there's not just one type of wind propulsion. There are actually 7 different categories, 4 of which are developing quite quickly now. And you'll see in a slide later which ones are actually taking off. Now, we do have the iron triangle challenge, the time, money, quality. I'm sure you're all familiar with this. This is we're starting to break this iron triangle now. If we look at the technology which is coming online now, increasingly available, increasing with predictability and actually future-proofing your vessels. With money, if we take an OPEX approach rather than a heavy CapEx approach, we can actually see wind propulsion systems being leased onto vessels as opposed to the heavy CapEx approach. However, if you do have that CapEx approach, ROI is around $600 per ton of fuel, then the ROIs start to come into that 3 to 4 year aspect, depending on the size of the rig. And of course, with the carbon approach, it's zero emissions. There are no external costs here. We don't externalize health, carbon impact, there is no eco footprint. And then on quality, that's something that can never be compromised. And as you see, just one very quick point here is virtually all of the classification societies have now published their wind assist guidelines publicly. So there's full support here from the experts in the field of getting these onto. Just to give you a little snapshot of where we are at the moment, 13 ocean-going vessels with wind assist systems will be installed by the end of this quarter. There are 11 on this page with 1 wind-ready vessel. That's actually, from my calculations, that's more vessels than all of the alternative fuels combined, excluding LNG and, of course, tankers that are carrying those fuels. Just to go back there, just very quickly, one point is you'll notice that there are no container ships on here at the moment. That's container ships have a specific issue around deck size or deck space. So off-deck systems such as pipes will certainly be advantageous for those, and those will be coming online this year. On small vessels and traditional sail developments, I'm not going to go into this in detail, but there are fishing applications, cruise applications, and of course niche areas for sail transport for cargo as well. And indeed, small island developing states or small islands in period certainly benefit from these systems. That is growing too. The next question is, okay, so where are we going with this? Well, the existing pipeline of projects, and this is without any commercial contracts to date, we're looking at around 47, possibly more vessels by the end of 2022 into early 2023. That's pretty much doubling each year from now on. 2030, an EU report or an EU Commission report looked at only 4 technologies, but they estimated around 10,700 maximum of installed systems by 2030 or in 2030. Of course, that depends on fuel price speed. That would constitute about 2/3 of the tanker fleet and about half of the bulker fleet. By 2050s, we're looking at a 40 to 45% penetration rate in the global fleet. That's according to the EU Maritime Plan. This is a very busy slide, and of course, I'm not going to go through all of these projects, but you'll have this slide available to you. We're seeing a real uptick in news, in developments. These projects include some quite big names in shipping recently. For example, Oldendorf Cargill is looking at wind propulsion at the moment. We've already heard from Mr. Peng Guishang about the VLCC that's been ordered with 4 sails included. So some really exciting news out there, and I'm more than happy to talk at length with anybody who's interested to learn more. Just a couple more slides. This is the projects and collaborations. As you'll see, we're working with the EU on 5 wind assist installations being monitored, and validation is really critical here. Validate those savings and validate the energy developed. ABS and Marin are heading up a joint industry project, which is looking at the regulatory perspectives, rules, regulations, and we will see some technical paper being delivered to IMO in the not too distant future. And IWSA itself is going to be developing or is in the process of developing an accelerator program to bring not just the best marketed technologies to market, but the best technologies. And if you'd like to know a little bit more, we actually have a wind propulsion forum with in association with Royal Institution of Naval Architects. And this is my final slide, just to highlight that this isn't a marginal technology segment anymore. There are some very large companies, very well-known names on this list. Not all of them are implementing or installing wind propulsion, but all of the companies here listed are all engaging in some way or form with the development of wind propulsion at present. And many of them are actually members of our association as well. So as I said, I'm more than happy to discuss this in more detail, but really the takeaway from here is we need to be looking at shipping from a propulsion perspective, not simply a fuel-centric. And on that point, I will pass it back to the chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Allwright, for presenting let's say all the increasing activity going on the wind propulsion issue. Clearly it will be exciting to follow you in the future. And now we have had all the presentations and we are turning into a Q&A session, and we continue with doing it the same way as we did it on the first block, meaning that I turn to the Secretariat if they have observed any questions in writing, which we can now have presented. So, Mr. Hondas, are you ready to present some questions?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thanks also to the speakers in this block for their excellent presentations, providing a state of play in shipbuilding, in engine manufacturing, the role of governments in supporting the uptake of low carbon alternative fuels. We've received a couple of questions. First, let me turn to Mr. Peng. A question from Torsten Mund from Germany about unintended byproducts during the combustion of ammonia, particularly if Mr. Peng can say something about the levels of N2O, nitrous oxide, following from internal combustion engines using ammonia. There's also a question for clarification, or actually application, potential application in the future of marine carbon capture applications. And this is a question posed by Mr. Dimitris Mounioudis, and it's both directed to Mr. Peng, but also to Mr. Akamatsu. Another question for Dr. Ahn, a question related to his presentation, a clarification actually from Mrs. Els Klaas from Belgium about the marine testbed. Dr. Ahn mentioned in his presentation projects ongoing in the marine testbed phase. And Ms. Klaas was wondering if he could elaborate a little bit more on that. What is the main focus of those tests? Do they take into account also safety aspects? So if Dr. Ahn can clarify that. We have another question for Mr. Oldenburg, particularly in relation to ammonia slip. This is a question from Captain Ian Finley, asking about ammonia slip when using that as an alternative fuel. There's also a question from Mr. Fernando Costa from Brazil, directed to Mr. Oldenburg about the current absence of regulation of ammonia in the IGF code. And if he can say something about how the cooperation with recognized organizations is in relation to certification of ships that use ammonia as a fuel. And then actually quite an interesting question to all speakers from Mr. Steve O'Malley, who is representing the ISO. And he's questioning, actually, there's a lot said in the different presentations about the need for further standards regulation set by IMO. But is there a need for additional standards to be developed by the ISO? Because taking into account the lead time of the development of those standards, it would be helpful if the panelists could give an identification or could identify any possible standards needed from the ISO to support further uptake and availability of low carbon fuels. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Henderson, and thank you to all which have put forward these questions. I suggest that we now start in the order we had the presentation. First, I turn to Mr. Peng, then to Mr. Ahn, then to Mr. Akamutsu, who also received a question, then to Mr. Oldenburg. And I didn't capture if Mr. Allwright received a question, but at least I have a question to him. So the point is, we start with Mr. Peng. You have the floor, please.
All right, thank you. Regarding the question about the nitrogen oxide, yeah, actually, if you choose in combustion engine as your main engine, there will be problem with the nitrogen oxide because the nitrogen is from the air the engine intakes. Even you choose the hydrogen as your fuel, you need to face the problem of nitrogen oxide. And during the GIP, the main energy solution have confirmed that they can, using just the burning combustion control technique, to make sure their engine converted from the LPG combustion engine can reach the NOx Tier 3 standard. As we know, the ammonia itself is just reducing material to turn the nitrogen oxide into the nitrogen. So that's the first question. And the second question regarding the toxicity about the ammonia. During our GIP, we have designed a lot of measures to solve the toxicity, such as we use the monitoring, we use the double wall piping system, and there's also some vent mast to prevent the contact from the sailors, from the seamen. And also we suggest that we can find some suitable flexible protected equipment for the seamen for their proximity to the ammonia. All right, that's all my answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peng. Can I now turn to Mr. Ahn, please? Mr. Ahn, you can respond to the question you received. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, why we, the Korean government, would like to build the marine test bed? Because we would like to have the proven technology before marine application, right? So many manufacturers, many Korean equipment manufacturers, they would like to have the chance for testing their own technology. But all of the testing facility is located on site. So the Korean government decide to to build the marine test bed. And actually, the marine test bed is not only one. We will consider the conversion from old-fashioned ships to a new technology-based built ship. That is my first answer about the question. And also, we also plan to make the standard. So we would like to lead the ISO standard as well as the other standard like IEC. Yeah, that is my answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And before I turn to Mr. Akamotsu, in order to respond to any other questions Mr. Hondos put forward, can I add on a question to Mr. Akamotsu? And clearly, there must be a high degree of motivation behind your, can I call it project or initiative? But what do you consider as the main hurdle? Is it of financial nature or is it of technical nature in order for you to succeed, Mr. Akamotsu, on your project or your initiative?
Okay.
Mr. Akamotsu.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the last question, of course, technical issue, we have to overcome some issues like N2O or those things. But we believe that commercial reason why end user should take this kind of a project, because everybody understand it's costly. Because vessel price should be high and fuel price should be high compared to the conventional fuel. Today, of course, everyone understand we should focus on a zero emission vessel or low carbon fuel, no doubt. But I think we should encourage the end user to accelerate their actions. Of course, many of the end users are interested in our development. Therefore, we found many people join us. But I think at the time of FID, we think that we need to introduce some motivation or incentive for them to do. So that is the first answer. And other question is as to the ISO standard. Of course, we fully appreciate that we need this kind of ISO standard for ammonia fuel at a later stage. And we had several initial study with the manufacturer and suppliers, but based on specification for fertilizer use. Therefore, as a marine fuel, we need to make a further study together with kind of societies, associations. Therefore, if ISO have interest in this kind of ideas, and then we'd like to develop together somehow. So that is we'd like to do. And the third is carbon captures. So I think in the Japanese industries, some of Japanese companies are under development of carbon capture, not only maritime industry, but also onshore side. Therefore, we try to set up a recycle system of CO2 anyhow. But from the ship, it's a bit difficult to set up a complete recycle system, even if we installed carbon capture on vessel. How we should discharge CO2 at the port. So that I think that is the key. So that is our answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akamotsu. I will now turn to Mr. Ralph Oldenburg to reply on his questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you very much for the interesting questions. I would like to respond first to the question of the work which ISO might face, and in alignment which has been already mentioned as a response. There might be, of course, at the later stage the requirement to give a specific standard to a fuel when fuel is used as a marine fuel. because chemical or physical properties related to purity also might differ from industrial use where the fuel is used. So there might be come in demand for additional work at ISO. It is so that engine manufacturers are already now very well represented in an ISO and will carry such topics forward to the International Standardization Organization. So there will be a timely follow-up at this point to cope with the future fuels in this regards. Another question which has been addressed to me was the regulation with the IGF code, how this works when basically a fuel is not considered in the IGF code. It is my understanding that it's in the coordination between an administration and the recognized organization working on behalf of the administration, a shipyard, engine manufacturers, and all stakeholders involved in the project. There is an opportunity to develop basically safety requirements in parallel based on the risk assessment, which is put in guidelines, I would say, which is used then by classification societies and will partly be used as well for classification societies notations to put in place in the absence of standards or regulations which are in place already. So this is something what has been done in alcohol or as well for other fuels when it come into play. So it's between the stakeholders in the project and the administration, there's an agreement how to move forward, and the standards are basically developed in parallel to the technical project. And this is of course the baseline which can be used in the drafting work at the MSc or CCC subcommittee or committee to build up a regulatory framework for a specific fuel. So that works. There is for individual projects, this can be handled in this way. The other question addressed was related to the ammonia slip. We have here noted several presentations today related to ammonia engines or possible ammonia engines which come up in near term. And the process is basically behind at the time being the diesel process. So it can be expected that the ammonia slip, if however present, will be very small. However, an ammonia slip takes place. So it can be expected that a full combustion takes place for such engines. On the other hand, there are already in practice exhaust after treatment solutions for ammonia. Ammonia is quite reactive and can be mitigated the slip with exhaust after treatment solutions if it's happened at all. Maybe this from my side at the time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Oldenburg. And can I also remind that if you want to have the floor to pose your question orally, just request the floor in the chat function and you will be given the floor. Can I now turn to Mr. Allwright and pose a question myself, which is related to the type of questions which has been relating to various types of fuel, meaning safety aspects of fuels. Now, wind, I guess there are also safety aspects when it comes to using wind propulsion, maybe things relating to stability, operations and maintenance, etc. So, Mr. Allwright, from your perspective, using wind as in shipping, are there any safety aspects in doing that which you want to address, or is the framework sufficiently robust in order to deal with such solutions?
Yes, there's been I'll deal with your question first, then I'll talk about the ISO aspect as well, because it is linked there as well. Yeah, there's been a lot of work done in this. We have some of the leading R&D companies, MARITIME, SSPA, BSA, and just recently SINTEF has come on board as members, and they've done extensive work looking at vessels, looking at the stability issues, Of course, safety is number one for all of the classes. Their guidelines are. It's not an area that I delve into deeply, not being an engineer myself. But of course, if you're looking at primary wind, then you have some stability concerns there. So you need to be concerned with the trim of the vessel. You need to be concerned with your ballast and handling. But those safety issues, wind is pretty much a passively safe system in the sense of problems with its operation, etc. Virtually all of the systems that we're seeing coming online now also have built-in retractability, tiltability, so they can be dropped quite quickly in extreme weather conditions, etc. So stability issues are certainly a primary concern. With maintenance and operations, most of the systems, again, I would say almost all of them are highly automated. So pretty much 2 people to operate them, 1 to press the button, 1 to make the coffee. With maintenance, again, I would say substantially less maintenance than, say, an ICE. But we still only have 11 ships in operation at the moment, and more data is being accumulated. So those systems are all being optimized. Hopefully that answers your question there, Chairman. According to, was it Mr. Malley's question about ISO standards? Yes, we are looking into these. We have a subgroup in our Atlantic hub that is looking at this quite extensively. And ISO, I think it's ISO TC8 around ships and marine technology. Obviously, safety is one aspect they're looking at, integration and the performance. Things like standardizing deck mounts. All of these kind of proprietary standards are really important. We're looking at making applications for ISO standards in the coming year.
Thank you very much to all the presenters for your very clear answers. I will now turn to Mr. Hondas. Are there any questions in the Q&A which is not responded to?
I think there's a question for Mr. Allwright as well, which actually relates to the use of wind propulsion and arrival in ports. And if there's any study, any research done in the relation between using wind propulsion and port arrival. And then I think there's another question which was posed for Dr. Ahn, but also for Mr. Akamatsu about the price of ammonia. And in relation to Dr. Ahn, if Korea, in his presentation, he mentioned the Korean national plan, is also thinking about how to make the pricing of ammonia accessible to the various ship owners. And the same question was posed to Mr. Akamatsu. How important is the price for ammonia in relation to his project? So these are the pending questions. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Mr. Hondas. And then we have 3 minutes remaining time. So I will take 1 minute to each of the presenters. First, I turn to Mr. Allwright, then to Mr. Akamatsu, and then to Mr. Ahn to respond to the final questions. And then I will wrap up for today.
Okay, so this was on impact on port arrival times for wind propulsion vessels. The 5 to 20% that I talked about for retrofits, that is based on an annualized assessment of a motor vessel. So the comparison is with a motor vessel that has A to B, exactly the same time, exactly the same operational profile. It can stay between 5 to 20%, deliver 5 to 20% of fuel. If you then choose to optimize your wind, and this is one of the key things about not siloing wind and fuel, is if you reduce speed, actually the percentage of your wind delivery or the percentage of energy delivered by wind increase substantially. Weather routing again, you may be slowing down, but delivering a substantially higher amount of energy from wind. Okay.
Thank you. And we then turn to Mr. Akamatsu.
Okay. Yep. So as to ammonia price, of course, today's ammonia it's for fertilizer business. Therefore, first of all, if we enter into ammonia as a fuel, we have to set up an index because for marine fuel, I think there is no spot market of the ammonia fuel. Therefore, we have to make a term contract. So in such case, price should be based on the kind of linkage. I don't know how should be linked. So maybe gas or maybe LNG or maybe something else. So that is a matter of discussion from now. And second is handling cost, because ammonia, comparing to the conventional fuel, transportation cost and the handling cost, storage cost is relatively high. Therefore, our idea is to arrange a bunkering very close to the production site. So that is the ideal case. Then we try to save the cost. That is the idea.
Thank you very much. And finally, Mr. Ahn, to respond to your question.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, the Republic of Korean government would like to choose the hydrogen rather than ammonia, because ammonia, as you know, ammonia is just one of the energy carrier, right? So our focusing is to achieve the net zero carbon dioxide emission. So our technology, R&D technology development project would also include the ammonia project, but hydrogen and LNG, those the green fuels are much more appropriate than ammonia, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of you for very valuable contribution to this symposium, and also thank you to all of those who have provided questions. And I will then hope, and I turn to the Secretariat now, that we can also provide written answer to the questions, meaning that those of you who have not receive responses to questions, we can find a way to communicate that in writing. And I see nodding from the Secretariat. Now, for me, this has been a very interesting symposium. I have taken many notes. All the 10 presenters have shared valuable experience and presenting your work and also visions on the use of various alternative fuels. And I think at the process at the IMO, such information will be needed as we go forward. We have not concluded. We have concluded for today, but tomorrow, I hope all of you can join us for tomorrow. We will have 2 new blocks with presentations, and that will start at 11 a.m. UK time, and I hope to see all of you there. So for now, thank you very much to all of you. Thanks to the Secretariat and the presenters and all the participants for your valuable contribution, and see you tomorrow. Okay, bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Great job keeping us on time.